party's plans to address the transit situation in York Region? And given that transit is not the only solution to all of our congestion needs, what are you proposing to help the traffic situation so that people and goods can get in and out of the region more easily? And I believe that we're going to give the first 30 seconds uninterrupted to Kyle, and then it's free for all, I guess. And we'll take about 8 minutes on this one as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Bill. So you won't be surprised to hear that I think the best way to grow the transportation and transit system is to invest in it. So our party wants to invest $20 billion over 10 years in infrastructure, including transit, and that includes highways, rail. We'd all like to see more GO trains up to Newmarket and further north. I think that will help a long way to alleviate the traffic gridlock. It's also a greener form of transportation. Also, more people will be off the highways, which should free up some space for goods to travel and get to market. Without goods getting to market, obviously nobody's benefiting from that, so that needs to be addressed too, and that's an important part of your question. But without investments, again, we're never going to have the transportation infrastructure we need to be a truly strong economy here in Ontario.
Well, I'm going to jump in on this one because, first of all, I think it's important that people know that only 20% of the infrastructure in Canada is actually owned by the federal government. The rest of it is owned by the provinces and the municipalities. But we have done some significant investments already in transit. There's a $2 billion annual fund that our government has already set aside. But let's take a look at some of the things we've done. We've got the longest and largest infrastructure project in the history of Canada, $80 billion over the next 10 years. We've already invested the Toronto-York Spadina subway system, the extension of GO Transit, the parking garage in Aurora, and we did the bridge down at the south end of Aurora. We've done the rehabilitation of Union Station. We paid for the extension of the 404 North and the 407 to the east. And the gas fund refund that comes back to the municipalities is doubled, it's permanent, and it's indexed, and that is money that the municipalities can count on year over year to do the kinds of infrastructure investments that they need to do. Do you know, in the time that I have been the Member of Parliament, $13 million has come to the town of Newmarket, and almost $8 million has come to the town of Aurora.
In terms of project funding, I mean, that's all well and good, but I think the issue here for municipalities is having a stable source of funding. And while, yes, the municipalities do own 60% of the infrastructure, they only receive 8 cents on the dollar, on the tax dollar, to be able to maintain that infrastructure. So we can talk about projects, we can talk about $8 billion here. Some of that happens because of incumbents in ridings, and we know that for a fact under the Canada Advertising Plan. But the other thing that I want to talk about is direct transfers that the NDP are willing to make $1.3 billion annually for the next 20 years, which does differ from the Liberal plan, which is looking at a much more short-term output of monies to municipalities. We agree that it will create many jobs, but we see this as a long-term plan that's over 20 years, because that's what it's going to take to be able to invest in municipalities. We also believe, and Tom Mulcair believes in particular, that he needs to be at the table, that municipalities have struggled under this government to have no Prime Minister to talk to for the last 10 years. They are fed up. And will also be there to talk with them and plan with them as they go forward.
Well, Ms. Kelly, let me make it very clear. The gas tax refund is the money that is coming directly back to the municipalities. It is money that they can count on.
It's not
and
enough.
No longer do they need to go through the Ontario government. We put the money through the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario and every other provincial organization like that, so that the municipality of Newmarket or Aurora simply applies to their own organization for their own per capita
But
funding.
you want to talk about
That's
the
the money that
Association
they
of
know they can
Municipalities.
depend on in order to do their capital cost investments.
The Association of Municipalities of Ontario is saying there's a huge deficit in infrastructure spending. So whatever you're spending isn't enough. And you can't say, oh, it's the job of the provinces, it's the job of the municipalities, we don't need to invest with that. You know what, they invented something about 150 years ago? A telephone. Maybe Stephen should pick it up and call some of these people.
80% of the infrastructure is owned by the provinces and the municipalities. It is up to those organizations to determine their own priority projects.
Right, so why doesn't your government communicate with them to find out what they are?
Let's take a
Let's
look
look at the list. Okay, thank you. Let's get it. Why don't we just hand this over to everybody?
Let's take a look.
What do you see as the role of the federal government?
plans.
What do you
The
think?
Newmarket
She
Operations
brags about a $2 billion infrastructure fund, and Newmarket got 20 million, and
Infrastructure.
that's an accomplishment.
Newmarket Public Library Collaborative, the Aurora Go Bridge, the Newmarket Old Town Hall, Aurora's recreational infrastructure, the Tom Taylor Place Housing Complex.
How is this related to transit?
This is projects. If they do not determine what their priority projects are that you say meet the transit, then it is up to the municipality to determine what their priority projects are.
Why are the
that the province
municipalities-
will then partner with them on.
So why are the municipalities across Canada so frustrated because they want to be able to have a dialogue with the Prime Minister, with the federal government, to be able to sort some of this out? Is it not reasonable for them to want to have some federal leadership?
Well,
That's so cute. Very cute. Like they have wings, but they're walking. Okay, one of them is confused. He's behind the fence.
The question is, does your party have a specific plan to deal with the congestion caused by the bottleneck at the base of the 404 and the 401? Yes or no? And I believe we started with Kyle this time, so we're going to now move over to Lois. I think, Lois, it's your turn to go first.
well, thanks, Bill, and I would say no to that because it is a provincial decision. However, what we have done is we have extended the money for the 404 extension, and the province of Ontario has identified that they need to widen the 404 with another lane, and so the federal government has come forward with matching funds for the province of Ontario to build another lane from the 401. It is coming as far north as the Whitchurch-Stouffville turnoff as its first tranche. There may be more after that, but right now this is a priority project for the province of Ontario. They are the ones who have identified it, and we will come to the table with money.
Your turn.
My answer is yes, because I think what we're talking about is creating alternatives for people. And if we're going to talk about easing a bottleneck and congestion on our highways, we have to talk about how we're going to address that problem in the long term. And that's where a better transit plan comes into place. That's where working with municipalities to be able to identify how we can improve that transit and make it more accessible to all people who need to take it. That will be the only thing that will reduce the congestion on our highways.
Kyle?
Yes, presuming that it's a priority of the Ontario government, as I said, we're going to work with the provinces and municipalities to make sure we fund their priorities and work together to get what needs to be done for them. Now, you mentioned that there's only one taxpayer, and I couldn't agree more. So let's spend that money efficiently. And the most efficient way to spend it is to work together with all stakeholders instead of just saying, here's how we're doing it. We're going to be there tomorrow for a photo op and the ribbon cutting. Have your person ready and let's get it on. That's not the way you do business. That shouldn't be the way we run government. Let's work together, find out the best and most efficient way to get these projects funded, and let's just do it.
The one behind the fence. Oh, there you go.
The next question has to do with accountability and integrity. And because the order is going on, and so that means that, Lois, you're going to have the first opportunity to respond to this. It's certainly not directed at one party versus another. The reality is that all politicians regularly turn up on the list of least trusted professions. Lawyers too, from what I understand. So, double dip.
Where do leadership consultants rate, Bill?
We're right up there. Very tall, very tall.
Double jeopardy, Kyle.
Anyway, I only say that because you opened that door. I had to go through. But voters are regularly faced with political scandals at various levels of government. Given the recent and historical scandals by various party governments, why should voters trust your party and you specifically? 1 minute, and we'll start with you, Lois.
Well, thank you very much, and I thank you for the question because it is incredibly important. It's the reason why our government in 2006 brought in the Accountability Act, because as a result, we saw $40 million that's been identified that the Liberals have never, ever paid back. But it is absolutely important that we have accountability and transparency in our government. We took the contributions of unions and corporations out of our political system. and only people can make donations, and the maximum they can donate is $1,500 a year. You can't buy my vote for $1,500. But I can also, as a leader, I have always had proactive disclosure of my expenses linked to my website because I believe that my constituents deserve the opportunity to see how I am spending their money.
Yvonne, you have a minute to answer that question.
Okay, so we've had 147 years of Liberal and Conservative governments. We've had 20 years where we had one government voted out because of a sponsorship scandal, and we've had another government that came in on the coattails of that and we know what we've been through in the last summer. So I guess what I could easily say to you is you could give us a chance because we haven't had 147 and specifically 20 years of scandalous outrage and unaccountability. However, I don't think that's good enough. I think that I can say very strongly as being a new Democrat for the better part of my life that we have actually ran governments in the provinces that have been very forthright about their expenses, very forthright about their practices. And I think one thing that Tom Mulcair has said that he will do is he will reinstate the parliamentary budget officer, which the Conservatives brought in to their credit, but then decided to take away once he disagreed with their policies. So we will on parliamentary budgets that would not happen otherwise.
Thank you very much. And now to you, Kyle.
Well, I always do find it somewhat entertaining when Conservatives bring up that they brought under force the 2006 Accountability Act. I mean, that's a piece of gimmick legislation that was meant to get headlines. They certainly haven't followed it since then. Every election since 2006, the Conservatives have been criminally charged. 2006, 2008, 2009. And Ms. Brown also talked about Gomery and things that happened when I was in university. Well, I don't think Gomery's a good thing, but I had nothing to do with it, I'm sorry. But Mike Duffy's a bad thing, and you had something to do with it. He came here and raised $6,000 for your riding association. Mike Duffy's appointed as the chief fundraiser for the Conservative Party of Canada. He breaks the rules, and Ms. Brown says that I'm not at all impugning Mrs. Brown's integrity. She says she can only accept $1,500 donation, and that's not enough to buy anyone's vote, and I tend to agree with that. But Mr. Wright's allowed to donate $90,000 to Mike Duffy, and he seems to get away with it. And Mr. Harper didn't know about it. We all know Mr. Harper knew about it. He knows about everything that goes on in that office. So to be lectured by Ms. Brown on integrity and accountability in her government is a bit rich.
There we go. Wait, look at that. Mama or Daddy's waiting. We're looking at you. Oh yeah, right.
Here's a little snapper of a question for you. I'm looking for a yes or no answer with virtually no explanation.
Can you explain virtually?
10 seconds is virtually. Question is, if your party is found to have misled the public and broken the public trust, are you personally prepared to step down from office? And we'll continue in our order, so we'll go Lois, Yvonne, and Kyle.
No, I'm hired by the people of Newmarket, Aurora.
Yvonne?
Yes, because the reasons I am involved in this go beyond just politics. So yes, I would.
Thank you. And Kyle?
Yes, it's a question of integrity, and I would.
Thank you very much.
All the babies are grown up now. Yeah. Well, that is so cute.
All right, we're going to have another series of 1-minute questions each, and this has to do with the long-form census, the switch. Wow, that's a sexy question. I had no idea.
Very good.
The switch to a voluntary household survey has resulted in the loss of comparable, longitudinal, long-form data that seriously impairs our ability to track labor market changes and measure the effectiveness of our economic policies. Will you commit to reinstating the mandatory long-form census? And again, I'd ask you to start your answer with yes or no, and then explain. And So we start with Yvonne.
Absolutely, yes. We have always said that this was the wrong thing to do. We are operating without the type of data and information and research that we had always relied on to be able to make sure that we're meeting the needs of Canadians and planning accordingly. And I find it rich that the Conservatives would take that away on the basis of it being too invasive and onerous on Canadians when we're stepping forward and entering into Bill C-51, which actually tramples invades our privacy and tramples our
Kyle, your thoughts?
Yes, we'll immediately restore the long-term census. Relatively make Statistics Canada fully independent with a mandate to collect all the data it needs. There's a lot of people rely on the private sector, not only the private sector, but other orders of government, not-for-profits, researchers. It's important data. And again, it all comes down to make good laws, you need good evidence. Our party believes in evidence to make laws and policy, so we need that evidence to make it.
And Lois, your thoughts?
Thank you, and my answer is no. There are many, many countries who have already disposed of this kind of data collection because the data is available in so many other ways. Do you know that if you walk through the Bay, they can track you for your spending habits, and they know more about you than the census ever will. But no, we believe that there are many other ways to collect the data.
Can we add that?
No.
No.
1 minute is up. I apologize for that.
Do you think that's a father with that one?
Father
Must
and
be,
mother.
yeah.
He waited.
Hurry up,
All night
slowpoke.
too.
Yeah,
They had to go to the bathroom.
I don't care what you had to do. Get over there before you get killed.
You gotta go there.